That was fast. Or was that someone who liked it beforehand? I don't know. So, as you can see in the title, um, this is a video, a stream, rather, my apologies, talking about what would happen if Tony Stark succeeded with Ultron. What if things went the way he wanted them to go? The way he wanted them to. Wait. Yeah, things went the way he wanted them to go. And Ultron didn't become this rogue AI. Well, for starters, obviously, the entire story of Age of Ultron doesn't happen. But we still need it to be a story, right? That has a villain. So, I'm thinking that the quote unquote villains in this version of the story would be Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, who, as many of you may be aware, have been at least associated with the villainous side before, being the son and daughter of Magneto in the comics. I also believe that this would sort of be a weird Civil War situation where you have two sides that disagree. Tony's side obviously believes that there needs to be more or less an Ultron, an Iron Man suit in every part of the world, but now being operated by this Ultron AI. As we see in the Age of Ultron movie, Ultron is not just capable of taking over technology built by Tony Stark, in this case, his suits, but also knowledgeable enough to upgrade that technology. Which I believe would still be the case here, except Ultron would work alongside of Tony and not against him, the Avengers, and thus the rest of the world. How's it going, Louis Ellis? So, that means that Ultron, in a weird way, becomes more powerful than, well, his bodies, to be more specific, than they were in the Age of Ultron movie. Yes, I do. And if you like Avengers related content discussions, this may be the place for you. I more so talk about Iron Man, but I place him in what if scenarios, as well as occasionally, though it's been a while since I've done this, discuss original characters to be put into his world. Thank you. At some point, I'm going to have a custom one made. I plan to pay somebody to make me one. So look forward to that in the future. Hello there, J. James. Also, thank you to whoever left another like. Really do appreciate that. I'm gonna mute just for a second. Getting back to it. The reason why Ultron is essentially more powerful in this version of the story than in the movie is because, number one, he's working alongside of Tony, or should we say, working for Tony, basically as a second Jarvis. So he's now got Jarvis and Ultron working along with it. Thank you so much to whoever has gotten me up to 4 likes. I really do appreciate that. There is something that confuses me, however. Thank you so much for your sub. It means a whole lot to me. I appreciate that. What confuses me is the fact that it's never made clear what Tony's intentions were for what he dubs Ultron. We don't learn why he calls it that. In my opinion, if you're going to more or less take a story and reinvent it, there should be a reason for why Ultron is named Ultron in the first place. I'm sure there's a reason given in the comics, right? Just like there's a reason given for why Spider-Man is called Spider-Man. Well, okay, I'll backtrack on that one. Maybe not, but Ultron is a program, right? When you name a program, there's a reason for that name. It could just be simple, but I feel like given how Tony works, there's always a reason behind what he does. And just to give a little bit of criticism towards the film, which for anyone who doesn't know me, which is probably all of you, I'm not really a fan of Age of Ultron. I think it's a fun popcorn flick, but I don't think in terms of story, it's anywhere near as good as the first film. It's weak. The focus of the film is not really there. Ultron has much less of a presence than Loki does in Avengers. And because of that, it makes one of the most infamous villains in Marvel history look kind of lame, if I'm being honest. But that's off topic. So I don't know why the name Ultron was chosen. And I don't know what his original intention was. Was the plan to more or less upgrade Jarvis to Ultron? Was it just a project name and they were just going to upload Jarvis into all these, you know, Iron Man suits around the world? Was that their intention? Also, why was Bruce Banner necessary in making this happen? His area of expertise would be in gamma radiation. And I don't remember exactly what he did in the comics as a scientist. Maybe it was developing weapons. Maybe it was trying to develop clean energy. But Banner, being an expert on AI, just like Tony, just doesn't make any sense to me. Because of their backgrounds. And not to mention the fact that because of them having to change actors, they kind of had to distance themselves from, I think the movie was called The Incredible Hulk. So he's just kind of there because he's smart, I guess. Which I get, but given what we know about Tony and his capabilities, does he really need Bruce Banner there with him to create Ultron? Can he do that himself? Getting off topic again. So I guess the intention was to upgrade Jarvis into Ultron. And then the Mind Stone somehow created an AI. Which again, I don't really get. I do, but I also don't, because computers are not minds. It has the power to influence minds, but to create a mind? I get it, but I also don't. So, we'll just assume that, yeah, Jarvis becomes Ultron. And the Avengers get it, but they also don't. I think Black Widow would be more accepting of this, along with Hawkeye, because having worked for S.H.I.E.L.D., they've done things that they might not agree with, but they also understand is important for national security. And look at the things that Nick Fury's done. This kind of feels like something that Nick Fury would give the green light on. Which is why I'm kind of confused as to his getting on Tony later on in the movie. Who better to build an AI than Tony, since he created Jarvis? In the MCU, at least, right? Isn't that the implication? That he created Jarvis, and Jarvis is an AI? If the issue was just you used the scepter to make that happen, yeah, I can get behind that. But once again, he already created an AI, so Nick Fury should not be shocked by this, nor alarmed by this. Captain America would obviously not be a fan of this, as he wasn't in the original. Regardless of whether Ultron went rogue or not. So, and Thor, I have no idea. I guess we'd have to make him neutral. You know, he'd say something like, "I don't really understand these things. These are outside of my my depth. They're out of my depth, and I also don't really understand technology, so I'll leave it up to you." Um, so he sends an Iron Man suit to every part of the world. But they're upgraded. They will never look like the Ultron bodies that we see in the movie, which would be very strange for people who are fans of the comics. Now, maybe Ultron takes it a bit too far. He suggests that humans are too weak and they need to be upgraded. And this is how Vision would come about. Which I think works nicely because Jarvis in the original timeline becomes Vision anyway. So this is basically him going from Ultron to Vision. He suggests to Tony Stark that we need to turn humanity into cyborgs. Which obviously would sound insane to Tony and he wouldn't go along with. So that's what causes the conflict. Ultron sort of becomes a second Thanos, where he does have a point. The humans are physically too weak to defend themselves from certain threats. They don't have the weaponry and knowledge to do so. But that doesn't mean you force them into being turned to cyborgs and being equipped with weapons designed for Iron Man suits. Now, I could see Tony at this point playing along. He can't get rid of Ultron because he's become too powerful. He doesn't have the means to disconnect him. He gave him too much access. So, how does he disconnect him? I realize I completely dropped the ball in the whole the brother and sister become the villains in this version of the film, but I think this idea works better. But then I've also gone off topic once again because that's just the way my mind works. Sorry, people. So Tony needs a way to getting back once again to the original point of this video, which was to be, what if Tony succeeded and there were no problems? Well, I think the story at that point would be too long for a single film. It would have to be a two-parter. The first part would be mostly focused on Tony and company being at odds with each other. But I don't think that's as many people as it was in the film. I really do think it's pretty much just Captain America. Although Banner may become conflicted when he finds out that Tony considers the safety of all people to be more important than their freedom. But just having an Iron Man around the world does not mean taking away people's freedoms. You're not putting in place any laws that would restrict them. I mean, what freedoms are you infringing upon that wouldn't have already been infringed upon by the Avengers being a thing? By superheroes going to other parts of the world and helping to defend the people from threats. I guess it could be the people's freedom to choose who their defenders are, but that's not a thing ever. Not in the real world, not in any world. If Tony had said, I'm gonna have Ultron replace all politicians, okay, well then you might have something. But that's not his mindset. That's not his goal. So this movie basically, yeah, is what I said about there being tensions that build over time. And Ultron, let's say, and I think I just figured out the solution to my problem here. Ultron gets the Mind Stone. He has a body that's his main body, and he takes the Mind Stone. Maybe he convinces Tony to let him have it, because number one, Tony doesn't even know what the scepter is really. He doesn't know about the Infinity Stones. But because the Mind Stone was used to create Ultron, this super-powered version of Jarvis, it makes perfect sense that Jarvis would know that there's an Infinity Stone which gives the scepter its power. Which, in my opinion, is a much better way to bring in the Infinity Stones than the hot tub time machine nonsense with Thor. Cut that out entirely. Uh, and Ultron just explains it all to Tony. Tony lets him have it because he has no reason to not trust Jarvis. To him, Jarvis is still Jarvis. Familiar voice, familiar personality, right? But when he gets the Mind Stone and inserts it into his main body, which, in my version of this story, is basically the Vision body, but not pink. It's a gray colored one. Which looks kind of like Vision, but also doesn't. And so, through the Mind Stone, he hears the thoughts of all mankind, as well as the thoughts, the inner thoughts of the Avengers. He hears something that makes him decide that humans can't be trusted. It's the whole violence is born from differences in opinion argument that he comes to. Thank you for the 5 likes so much. I appreciate that. And it's because of that he ultimately decides what we discussed earlier. Humanity needs to be upgraded. But not just upgraded, turned into a hive mind. Now, through the Mind Stone, we'll say that Ultron obtained the knowledge to build himself that new body, the sort of gray Vision body. Or it could even be black. Doesn't matter, just so long as it's not pink, because we're gonna get Vision later, and it's gonna be this more powerful Ultron body versus Vision later on. So the Avengers are basically fighting against Vision, against Ultron in this film. And nothing they do seems to work. He's got an Infinity Stone. He's got a superior body. It's interwoven with vibranium. And he's hooked into the internet. So my thoughts are that they basically build Vision from scratch, but they give him the Tesseract, which is, of course, the Space Stone. I personally believe this makes more sense in terms of his phasing abilities. He won't be able to disconnect him from the internet the same way, but maybe he can use the Space Stone to go inside of him and do it that way. And that's how I'm thinking it more or less goes. Part 2, they build Vision. They give him the Space Stone. They ultimately take down Ultron. And that's that. I guess what I'm saying is I don't see a conceivable in any way in which Tony can truly succeed with Ultron without there being some kind of conflict born from that. And without Ultron still becoming an antagonist at the very least. Because this is still a movie that needs to have, well, a conflict. It can't work without one. Unless you want to make Tony the antagonist. Or you want to do something really interesting and bring Doctor Doom into this. And say that Doctor Doom more or less is the reason why Ultron becomes the way he is. That would be interesting. But you'd be putting two antagonists slash villains into a single movie. Which, for me, makes it cluttered. Not every Avengers movie needed a villain behind the scenes. And pretty much every single one did. The first one, and I don't need to tell you, you've seen them. If we were discussing this as from the perspective of this isn't a movie, we're just looking at it as a literal what if where there's no conflict, then at that point, every single Marvel film that comes after Age of Ultron revolves around Ultron helping out one of the main heroes in defeating their subsequent opponents. It'd be very interesting to see how this would change Doctor Strange. Because I can't see the movies going off without one of these Ultron bots making an appearance and probably duplicating themselves, right? Wouldn't just be an Iron Man suit around the world, it would be Iron Man suits around the world. Then again, since this is Tony succeeding, he probably says, okay, like, if you need more than one, that's fine. But after that, we're stopping. So, uh, I think we've pretty much discussed all that we can. Um, as far as this subject goes. Um, but what do you think? Is there something that I've forgotten about or missed? Um, I'm just trying to think if there's anything obvious that I should have considered. Okay, well, one little thing. I don't believe this means that Tony is no longer Iron Man from this point forward. This is the man who believes there always needs to be a backup or an answer for any potential problem. So he's going to continue upgrading his suits just in case. Which will be necessary when Thanos shows up. No matter how much Ultron upgrades himself and his others, upgrades all his vessels, it's still not going to be enough to stop Thanos. Unless you want to go really crazy and say that by the time Infinity War happens, I don't know how this would be possible, but Ultron basically makes himself his main body makes himself an amalgamation of both Vision and Tony's nanotech suit in Infinity War, which I can't even picture in my head, but in that scenario, I don't think Thanos wins, because you've still got Tony with his nanotech suit, and now you have that same technology more or less fused in with the Vision body. And I mean, let's just look at the fight in New York, right? Ultron, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Wong versus, again, I can't remember his name, but I think it's Ebony Maw and the big guy. I think one of them gets taken down. At the very least. I also think that the Avengers never split up. And because of that, well, they wouldn't split up. What am I talking about? Civil War is what split them up. Oh, but that doesn't happen. Because Ultron didn't try to destroy humanity. So the Accords aren't written and thus signed. So the way I imagine this version of that story going, and I'm going to update the title to include um, the events of Infinity War. Which I wouldn't have done in this stream had I not only been on for like 40 something minutes. But they don't split up. Cap is still Cap. And when Maul and the big dude appear, they get in contact with Steve, with Captain America, Hawkeye, and the others. I didn't discuss what the deal with Black Widow what the deal with Scarlet Witch would be, but there'd be a way for her to still join up. I mean, she'd still have to be part of the story, her and her brother. I just don't think it. I'm pretty sure that in this version, both Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch make it out past that movie, and they continue on into this film. And then Thanos has some real problems. Because you've got two of his underlings get defeated here. And I'd argue rather quickly. Because I just don't see how the two of them can face off against Tony, Doctor Strange, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Wong, Ultron, Scarlet Witch, and the others don't even need to be mentioned because they're kind of a non-factor. But and I mean, I'm sure Spider-Man still shows up to contribute. So they don't go into space. They stay on the Earth. Something else I just realized is that Thanos doesn't target the Asgardian ship because the Space Stone is not there. It's with Vision. Well, I completely forgot to mention. Wait, would he be in this? There wouldn't be a need for Vision. And what am I talking about? They didn't have the Tesseract. I'm sorry. Although, since Ultron did tell them about the Infinity Stones, I have a feeling he would also recommend that they keep the Infinity Stones together. maybe suggesting that they be put on Earth. I know Thor would never agree with that, but maybe somehow he does decide it best to leave one stone more or less with another. Because I don't know about Thanos yet. At least I don't think they will. I don't think Thor would. He only learns about Thanos when the ship is attacked, right? The only character who knows about Thanos is Gamora and Loki. Which leads to a very interesting change wherein Loki is probably the one who tells them all about Thanos. And they accept him as a they reluctantly accept him as an ally. Although Thanos could still take him out for betraying him. So there's that. But yeah, isn't this an interesting version of the story? The Asgardian ship doesn't get targeted because the Space Stone isn't there. You could make the argument that Thanos still targets it because he wants to know where the stones are. But wasn't it said that, or wasn't it implied that the stones lead him to other stones? Which I'm thinking means he's just gonna head to Earth. Or would he? Well, he doesn't have the space dome, so he can't travel around uh, in the same. He can't travel around as he can't get around as quickly on his while searching for the other stones. So I guess he needs to go to Earth. So Infinity War now concludes with Thanos being defeated. There's gonna have to still be a reason for Thor to want to get Stormbreaker. And I think that can still happen. You would still have You'd have to have a way to involve Black Panther. Um, you know what I just thought of? What if, to prevent there being a lot of collateral damage, they all decide to lure Thanos and his forces to an uninhabited planet um and I have no idea where that could be. I'm overcomplicating this. So I think what I'm going to do is wrap this up and continue the conversation in a future stream, potentially. With that being said, I want to thank you all for joining me for this stream. I hope you will be there for the next one. I hope you enjoyed. And I hope that you will consider leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing. When this is made public and more of you can see this. This has been Black Angel Inserts, signing out. The truth is, I am Iron Man.